Howdy, we're going to do a real quick video on white fragility. Could you see my ass? Did you see my ass? It's fucking hot as fuck in Vegas, baby. I'm hot as fuck in my underwear. Listen. So, listen. Right now, Robin DiAngelo is getting dragged all over lefty YouTube like Adriana from The Sopranos. But at the same time, she's all over PBS and Jimmy Fallon being asked, being talked to like an expert on race in America. Because she wrote a book in 2018 called White Fragility. Now, like Michael Brooks and Matt Taibbi, all these people are talking about her. But the fact of the matter is this show deserves full credit for this. And I'll tell you why. In 2016, I remember coming across this woman before she even had a book. And I knew right away that that she was like a scam artist. I call her the woke Jordan Peterson. Here's the scam. She wrote a book called, or she came up with an idea of white fragility. It's got no science behind it, no data. But immediately when I heard that term white fragility, I just went, oh, it's like the stereotype of like the soft white person, as opposed to the stereotype of like Mr. T. And when the second you go, hey man, I'm not fragile, then she goes, well, then that's an example of your white fragility. So it works. It's like an Ouroboros. It's like a snake that eats itself. It's very clever. Catch-22, whatever you want to call it. It's clearly a scam. She's what I call a woke hustler. So we're going to watch this real quick. It's called, I'll find out the title real quick. Hold on.
To be white in so many ways is to be raised, to be functionally illiterate on the topic of race.
Real quick, a broken clock is a right, a couple of times a day or whatever. I shouldn't have had to read The Scarlet Letter when I was a kid. I should have been able to read, like, the autobiography of Malcolm X. That would have been dope.
White, and part of being white is...
She just said she's white, and she is, and she's got a weird mouth.
...that I was not raised to see myself in racial terms. I mean, I understood that somebody had race, but not really me. To be white is to see oneself outside of race, to see oneself as a unique, special individual, exempt from the forces of socialization.
It's called Debunking Myths About Race. Here's the thing. She runs these diversity training programs. She did the Starbucks diversity training program after those two guys got kicked out for having a business meeting. So then cut to recently with the uprisings. Some people at Starbucks wore some BLM solidarity armbands, and they were told to remove those because diversity training programs don't work. They don't fix racism, dude. You know what fixes racism? I'll give you 3 guesses. I don't see color. That's one of the myths that she lists. So when somebody says I don't see color, what they're saying is I don't judge somebody's character based on the color of their skin. So let's hear what she says, though.
I'll never forget a moment of standing beside a black man leading a workshop on race.
She's never forgotten any moment she's ever stood next to a black man. But let's set that aside real quick. I think she's making this story up.
The white woman said to him, I don't see color. He said, well, then how are you going to see racism? Because I am black. I do think you know that. And I have a different experience than you do.
There's no way that conversation happened. No fucking way that conversation fucking happened. If anything, if it even happened, she said it herself.
And you're not going to be able to understand that, and you're not going to be able to support the parts of that experience that are really painful and problematic if you refuse to acknowledge my reality. I don't see color is really a way of...
I don't see class is a refusal to acknowledge reality. Because that's where systematic racism comes from. That is where it stems from slavery, the capitalist enterprise of picking cotton and creating race in order to justify free slave labor, to convince people that, hey, well, look, their skin's dark, therefore they're like wild dogs, and we're just training them to make money. Anyways.
Saying, I refuse to acknowledge the reality.
I have black friends.
What?
Nobody fucking says I'm not a racist because I have black friends unless they're overt racists. Nobody says that anymore. But like Jordan Peterson, she blames everything on progressives. And she's claiming that we do that somehow. I don't have any black friends, by the way.
What's important about that narrative is it reveals
'Cause I'm not a
what
racist.
the person thinks racism is. So if the person is using proximity, fondness...
You know who uses proximity and fondness? People like Dennis Prager, who hires black people to talk about, to claim that systematic racism doesn't exist for his stupid little dumb fucking fascist porn videos. The thing is like, Robin DiAngelo also does that because she had Michael Eric Dyson write her intro, and she really makes gold out of that hay.
Cross race as evidence of a lack of racism. In order for that to be good evidence, a racist must not be able to do that. So that rests on an understanding that a racist cannot tolerate proximity to people of color. And
I wouldn't be able to tolerate proximity to her. She's got a weird zit on her fucking eyebrow. Here's the thing. Here's the other thing I want to talk about. White privilege. She really pushes the white privilege narrative. Walking down the street without getting murdered is not a privilege. It's a right. It's a right that poor white people are given as an extension of what Du Bois called the racial bribe. In other words, you're poor and we're going to oppress you, but we're not going to murder you the way we do black people. So when people like Robin DiAngelo or Peggy McIntosh start talking about how poor people are privileged, what they're saying is, we are allowing you to breathe. They've done studies that show that people who use the term white privilege and who push that narrative of white privilege tend to view working white poor people as having a low character, and blame them for their poverty, not the system that Robin DiAngelo is defending. And we'll get to that in a second.
Hoping that we can see that's pretty absurd because, trust me, even avowed racists can tolerate being around people.
And by the way, yeah, Robin, you're an avowed racist. You don't see individuals, and yet you hang out with black people all the time. So, and you just got done saying, by the way, she just got done saying that she was hanging out with a black guy at a diversity training program, etc., etc. You heard her. Real quick though, just to back up that white privilege thing I was saying, you'll notice that people's knee-jerk reaction is usually, I work for a living, I have 5 jobs, I got kids to support, there's nothing privileged about my existence. And at that point, don't argue with that, dude. When somebody comes back with that argument, you shouldn't have said privilege. You should say, well, there's some benefits to being white, which is you don't die. We need to build working class solidarity across racial lines. Fred Hampton talked about that. Martin Luther King talked about that. Malcolm X talked about that. We need to build working class solidarity. And people like Robin DiAngelo and people like Peggy McIntosh and people like Jordan Peterson, their job is to exacerbate those divisions in order to keep that solidarity from happening. Because if we're all part of the same fucking team, and we already are, because most people don't even know who this fucking dummy is.
Of color, and often are.
Race has nothing to do with it. It's about class. That's right there. Her bread and butter comes from corporations who hire diversity training, just like Starbucks did. It doesn't help. It doesn't change anything. But it offers an alibi for companies in case they get sued for discrimination. They can go to the EEOC and say, hey, we had Robin DiAngelo. She said we're not racist. We're off the hook. Race has nothing to do with it. It's about class. Do you think that she goes on PBS? I just saw her on PBS earlier, and I can guarantee she doesn't do this. Do you think she goes on Jimmy Fallon and says, hey, man, you want to end systematic racism? Here's what you do, McDonald's. Raise your wages. No fucking way will she say it in a million fucking years, because she won't have a job. She won't get to be rich anymore. Race has nothing to do with it. It's about class.
You cannot talk about any other issue without talking about how...
Class. You can't talk about any other issue in America without talking about class. Class. She says you cannot talk about any other issue without talking about how race informs it. Yes, you can. I can talk about midget porn without talking about race. I can't talk about midget porn without talking about class. Why is that midget making porn? Couldn't he afford to go to college? Oh, he went to college. He graduated. Can he get a job? Doesn't that job pay as well as midget porn?
Race informs that issue.
Why do midgets even have
and
to work?
When someone says it's about class, that tends to function as a way to get race off the table.
When Robin DiAngelo talks about race, that serves to function as a way to get class off the table. Now, this is a fun experiment. Let's hear what she says, and then see if we can substitute the word race for class, and see if she might be projecting a little. I'm going to start...
First of all, we're already divided by race.
First of all, we're already divided by race. I'm trying to do Jordan Peterson. First of all, we're already divided by race. Nah, we're divided, like, physically through segregation. And the one reason might be because it's a lot easier to scoop up bodies in a black neighborhood, throw them into the prison system, get them working for free. When they get out of prison, they got a felony tag, so you can go have them work at a car wash for $5 an hour. You can guarantee none of the people in those neighborhoods have lawyers. So it's an extension of slavery. It's an extension of Jim Crow. And its purpose is to make money. Black people are there to make money. That's why they were brought to this country. Cheap fucking labor. And that hasn't changed. And we use systematic racism in order to do that. We want to maintain that. One way to get rid of it would be to get rid of that economic system. If you remove the profit motive, you also remove the power.
And focusing on race is not what did it. I would say not focusing on race.
Not focusing on class.
To grapple with how race shapes virtually everything.
Race shapes virtually everything. I can't do Jordan Peterson. God damn it.
Is what keeps us divided. And that is a very white narrative.
That's a very white narrative.
All of those narratives function to get race off the table.
Those narratives function to get class off the table.
Close the expiration. Exempt the person from any further engagement.
Exempt Robin DiAngelo from any further engagement about capitalism.
And protect the racial hierarchy and the white position with it, which is an unequal hierarchy.
Do you notice how she's applying race as the hierarchy? It's as if she is protecting the actual hierarchy of inherited wealth. Sound familiar? She's Jordan Peterson.
I want to offer my fellow white people is changing the question from if to how.
Okay, fellow white people, let's change, and black people. It's hard for me to name all these people because I don't see race. Let's see. Why don't we change the question from race to class? Robin here doesn't want you to do that. She wants to keep it about race.
So dominant culture
so we can divide the working class.
asks.
We can't have solidarity. We can't have working class solidarity.
Racist. And I want to change that question to how have I been shaped by the forces of racism?
It's funny how she talks about how we need to remove individuality, and then all of a sudden it's all about you as an individual. not the system itself.
How is racism manifesting in my life? Because it circulates
She has such a weird
24/7,
mouth.
365. None of us can be, and none of us were exempt from its forces. And this is where individualism can come.
None of us is exempt from the forces of class. None of us.